Blessings and welcome to today's Law Enforcement Daily Devotional. Today was a very exciting read, Ezekiel chapters 26 through 28, and I really hope, more so than normal, that you were able to read ahead. And let me just say right here, if you didn't get a chance, pause this, go back and read Ezekiel 26, 27, and 28, because the next part of this, I guess explanation or the meat of what we do every day is going to really hinge on whether or not you read this or not. So pause. Okay, now hopefully we're back, or maybe you just read it all anyway. A couple of years ago, at least 10 years, maybe more, I was listening to John MacArthur on the radio, and he was it was a sermon or a teaching, I'm not sure which, I don't remember because it's so long ago, but he explained and laid out the history of this prophecy that Ezekiel gave. And in verse 1 of chapter 26, Ezekiel tells the exact day that God gave him this prophecy. So you could go back in history and line up the day he gave this prophecy up with the events that follow, and it is incredible. Okay, so let's see. Let me get to where, because I tried to transcribe all my notes into here, and I'm just going to read this to you for the most part. By dating it, it authenticated what God was telling him. Nebuchadnezzar came up and laid siege on Tyre after Ezekiel had given this prophecy, and Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to it for 13 years. Now, Tyre was this, or Tyre, or however you want to say it, was this city on the coast where ships would come in and trade, and it was very rich. So when Nebuchadnezzar came in and sieged this city, you can imagine he could get on all the sides of the city except for the waterfront side. So for 13 years, from 585 to 573 BC, Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to the city. Nebuchadnezzar broke down all of their after 13 years, the only reason the city actually surrendered, Nebuchadnezzar never actually defeated them. They surrendered because they were starving to death after 13 years. But anyway, when Nebuchadnezzar got inside, he broke down all the walls, the buildings, the towers, the strongholds. He destroyed everything that Ezekiel said he would destroy. But Nebuchadnezzar never got the spoils of the city, because Tyre had a island, and Tyre, because it was a ship port, sent all their treasures out to this island where Nebuchadnezzar couldn't get to it. And Nebuchadnezzar did not have a navy, so he could not get out there and get the spoils. And in Ezekiel chapter 29, the prophecy says, "You will gain no plunder." So Ezekiel prophesied that after this 13-year siege that hadn't even started yet, that when it was over, you won't get any spoils from it. Just incredible. Nebuchadnezzar didn't have a fleet, couldn't get out there to get to it, and the island became the new city of Tyre, and they built the city on this island, and it flourished, and it was fortified, and the island grew prosperous again and became a big flourishing city. Well, that's not what the prophecy said would happen to Tyre. It said that every bit of building material would be scraped off of Tyre, and there would be absolutely nothing left but this bare rock. So even though a lot of the prophecy was fulfilled, a lot of it wasn't fulfilled. So what happens? Well, 250 years later, there was a 24-year-old leader of an army named Alexander the Great, who happened to be coming by, and he had just got through defeating the Persians, and he needed to resupply his army because he was headed to Egypt to take Egypt. He had 33,000 infantrymen, 15,000 cavalry, so he had a lot of soldiers that needed to be replenished, and he needed their food supplies stocked. So he stopped at Tyre and asked him to help, and they looked at him. They said, he doesn't have a navy. He can't do anything about us out here on the island. So they said, no, we're not going to help you. Well, young Alexander decides, well, then you're my next goal. We'll forego Egypt. We'll put them off on the back burner. I'm coming after you. So Alexander decides to make this 2,000-foot causeway, 200-foot wide, so he can just walk out to the island. He doesn't need ships, but he needs material to build the causeway. So what do? They took all the rubble and all the things that were left from the 250 years prior when the walls were broken down. They take all those rocks and everything and throw them in the sea and make this causeway. And when they're done, they've completely scraped the old site of Tyre off into the ocean or to the sea, just like the prophecy says. Alexander, Tyre has these 150-foot walls that protect this island city, so Alexander makes these 160-foot. Now that's 20 stories tall, ladies and gentlemen. These 160-foot towers on rollers that he rolls up, plops a wall down, and they walk right into the city. Once they get into the city, they initially killed 8,000 people. Over the next few months, they executed 7,000 more. And then when they got ready and resupplied and ready to go into Egypt and didn't want to mess with Tyre anymore, they sold the remaining 30,000 people into slavery. And then they marched off into Egypt. Just as a point of interest, Israel, or Jerusalem, the city on the hill, Jerusalem, that is the capital of Israel, was rebuilt 17 times. Tyre has never been rebuilt, and to this day you can go out there on a little tour in the sea and you can see the fishermen stop there and they throw their nets out and they dry their nets on this big rock island that has nothing on it, and the prophecy is fulfilled. John MacArthur put a probability of this ever happening by chance. The chance of this ever being done like this was 1 in 75 million. So the prophecy from God is obviously, that's a guarantee. We don't, 1 in 75 million is impressive until you hear, well, God prophesied that. Oh, well, then it's 1 in 100. 1. God says it, it happens. So anyway, awesome read. Tomorrow we're in Jeremiah chapter 37, verse 3 through chapter 39, verse 10. So you're going to read all that. Then we're going to jump to Jeremiah chapter 52 and read verses 5 through 30. Go to 2 Kings and read chapter 25, verse 2 through verse 21. Then 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verses 17 through 21. So you guys be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow.